When the outdoor season approaches, naturally you want to bring your smart home to the outdoors, where it matters. That's where the Tapo P400M Matter-supported outdoor smart plug can help. I will go over everything from setup and controlling the plug using the application to power usage. I'm Wanderer 001. Let's get into it. Starting off with some general hardware information, you are looking at a device that is 4.2 inches wide, has a depth of 3.1 inches, and a height of 1.6. You also have a cable. You have 8 inches of actual usable cable space, 9 inches if you include the plug. The cable itself is very thick, which is both good and bad in that first, yes, it's not going to get kinked up very easily, but second, it's going to make this a little tricky with some forms of weatherproof outdoor electrical housing. As you can see here, my particular setup, this kind of leaves a little too much room, in my opinion, for that electrical outlet to be fully watertight, but I've used several other types like this and it's been okay. But just know you might have to use some of the included things that come with this to kind of tamp down this cable, as it is rather substantial. Coming to the top of our device, this is a completely plastic housing. You do have a little Tapo branding up there and then 2 individual actuators for our plugs. These do have little LED lights in them, letting you know the status of the individual plugs, whether it's off, as you can see here, or green when it's on, or orange when it's being paired, set up, or there is a problem. I like the fact that there are physical buttons on this, so you don't have to use the application or even a voice assistant if you don't want to. Coming to the, what I'll call the front, this is where our plug setup is, and I will say Tapo has made some improvements from their TP-Link days in that the front housing, these are separate weather stripping for each plug, and the fact that they are attached to the device itself means the chances of you losing this are much, much less. The one downfall with this type of setup is, well, you could see they could get in the way of things that you're plugging into it, but also in the past, this was a much larger space and you could get a better variety of plugs in here. This might be a little tight. There is a nice lip around the front fascia here in order to help channel water away from the plugs, which is nice, but just know it might be a little tight in there. If we come to the bottom of the plug, you can see there's not a lot going on there. That is a QR code for Matter setup, but that's something we'll talk about a little later. Speaking of the weather resistance of this outdoor plug, as you might imagine, it is IP65 weather rated. That's going to allow it to get wet and not have to worry about things that you have plugged into it. It also has an operating temperature of between -4 degrees and 122 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning you could use this in the dead of winter in most places and the dead of summer. This could be your all-around outdoor smart plug for either those holiday lights or that outdoor fountain that you want to set up a schedule for. The plug itself uses the 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi standard, so that's going to get you further range, slower speeds than 5 gigahertz, but with something like this, you don't need those faster speeds, you need longer range. In fact, Tapo states that this has a 300-foot range in open transmission, meaning nothing is blocking it, or up to 164 feet through 3 concrete walls. I don't have concrete walls, but what I can say is I have tested this plug at the furthest point of my yard and have had no problems. Granted, I don't have a super large yard, but it did go through my house and reach the furthest point that I could do. Also have a Wi-Fi router up there if you're interested in what I was using for testing this. Speaking of our Wi-Fi, the device itself will sit on your Wi-Fi network as one device. However, in the application, you get 2 separate indicators for each of the plugs, which I greatly appreciate. The fact that I'm not bogging down my Wi-Fi network, I get 2 plugs for the price of 1. With our specifications out of the way, what's next? Well, that is setup. This is a Matter device, so there are actually 2 separate ways that you can set this up. You could set this up to work just with the Tapo application, or you can scan that QR code down there to use this as a Matter supported device. The one thing I will say about setup is I wish Tapo did a little better job of separating the Matter setup process from the Tapo setup process. As I started the setup process and it looked like it was going to jump into the Tapo, but then prompted me for Matter. and then I backed out of Matter, and then got to the Tapo. But why take my word for it? Let me show you what that was like. This will be setup of the Tapo P400M Matter-supported outdoor smart plug. You start by accessing your Tapo application, and in the upper right-hand corner, press the plus sign, and then Add Device. From here, we're going to find what it is we're trying to add. So in this case, it is a plug, and then we have to go and find our Tapo P400M. So it wants us to plug this in. We're waiting for these lights to blink orange and green. They already are, so we're going to hit next. Now, to start the setup process, we're going to scan the QR code. We're just going to do that quickly off camera, and it has the QR code. Google Home. This is for the Matter setup portion of this. So in my case, my Matter hub is not currently active, so we're going to exit this portion, which will then move us to the Bluetooth, and then the device is going to search for Wi-Fi, and I'm going to put this on my IoT network and continually remind Tapo that it would be nice if they would stop displaying passwords in plain text at the forefront. You can make it so you can view it that way afterwards, but just not right away. And here we have, it is connected. So each plug acts as an individual plug. So here we can say Tapo Outdoor. We can assign a specific icon. So we're just going to say that's a house. And then we can do number 2, Tapo Outdoor, and assign something, which don't necessarily know what I would do it. So I will say that, and next, and next. Where will this be located? Garage, outdoor, or custom. I'm going to say that's going to be by my garage, and we'll give that a chance to finish up. There we go. Check for firmware. Everything's already up to date. It's setting up the time where this will check and see if there's firmware, which is one of the things I like about Tapo. So it's going to do it between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. when my network should be less congested. And here we have all devices, but if I come over to the garage, I can see here are my 2 outlets. I can turn them off just like that, or I can turn them on by selecting them here, and then it will take a moment for them to show up in the application as being turned on. There we go. And that completes setup. There you saw, it's not terrible, but I wish they did a little better job distinguishing your Matter setup from your Tapo setup. And to stop showing my password in plain text. Tapo, I've been saying this. Please make that a thing. One often overlooked and very important feature of any smart plug is what happens when power is lost and then restored. If you have this outside and you have it as a water feature, not terrible. But what if you have this as some sort of outdoor lighting? What happens when power is restored is very important. In the case of the Tapo Outdoor plug here, you actually have a variety of options. First being, when power is restored, it could come back in the last state that the plug was in, or it could come back in an off state, or it could come back in an on state. All this and more is done through the Tapo application. So let's take a look. This is the application for the Tapo Smart Wi-Fi Outdoor Plug P400M. Here we could see it breaks this plug down into 2 separate outlets. However, on your Wi-Fi, it's only going to show up as one outlet. So what we're going to do is if I click into one of these, it's going to show me all of my stats. I can trigger, without even going in, turning on and off the outlet, which is right over there. We're going to come down to my plug 2 because that has the most runtime at the moment. Here we could see our plug information. So there's our name, its location. I have a schedule set up. So this is an event right here. We have our individual image for this, which we can change. We have our power on and off toggle right here. And you'll notice there's a little subtle animation that happens as you do this, kind of brightening up the top layer, kind of starting there and moving out. Here we have our runtime for this plug. So right now you can see it has run for a total of 10 hours today. It has run for a total of 61 hours over the past 7 days, and over the last 30 days, because I've just only gotten here, it's the same as my past 7 days. Notice that there is no electrical usage information here, just runtime. Coming down, we have our schedule. Now I do have a schedule in place for turning things on and turning things off, and that's going to be something you have to do. If you're going to use the schedule, you have to make sure to set a trigger action for both, whether you want it on and off, or if you just want it on, that's going to leave it on all the time. But to do this, we come up to the upper right-hand corner here, press the plus sign. We would select our custom time. We could do sunrise, sunset, or set a specific time, turn the device on or off, and then select what days of the week this action happens, and then hit the save button. You can see that's why you have to set a on and off in order for this to work correctly. To the right of that, we have timer. This will allow you to set a timer for turn device on after X amount of time, and then turn device off after X amount of time. To the right of that, we have away mode. So you can set your away mode and then individual days. So I can set from here, or I could do sunrise. And what that will do is simulate somebody being home. It'll simulate activity on that particular switch. If you have this plugged into a light, it'll turn that light on and off on a random happening during the time frame for your away. Here we have smart actions. If I select smart actions, this is where you can come to really fine tune things that happen, where they have a couple of preset ones, but you can have, if camera X detects somebody, turn outlet 1 on, turn outlet 2 off. If a motion sense happens, do this. There's a lot of things that they kind of pre-program for you, but you also have your own that you can add here. You can also do that by pressing the plus sign up here. Shortcut just creates a shortcut for you. Automation will allow you to do if this, then that thing. So effective time, in this case, always, when, time of day. Add a trigger, meaning if this, a device time or whatever happens, then this happens. There's a lot of in-depth things that you can do in the smart actions area, and I really appreciate that. We have device sharing. If I select this, I can share this, but people will need their own Tapo account. And then you have help and feedback. And last but not least down here, favorites, which will have it on the front page of your Tapo application. You can turn that off if you want to. Now, this is everything that we can do for the plug controls, but I want you to notice something right there. It might be a little hard to see. There's a little pill, and if I swipe, well, look at that. You can swipe between your two smart plugs because this is a single device. So even if you click into one, you can swipe over to the other if you wanted. But we're going to come up here to the sprocket icon in the upper right-hand corner. These are our settings for the Tapo plug itself. Here we can see this is how we can change the name and the icon. Backing out. We can also do that for plug 2. So remember, this is a single unit, but we can access individual plugs, so to speak. Coming down, we have location. I can change the location of where this is set for. I have LED status. I have auto, off, or night mode. And then night mode, it will use sunrise and sunset based on your location, or you could do custom and set, hey, make sure the LEDs don't show up during the specific time. I like that level of customization. Coming down, default state. Well, here we go. Last on state, or off state. This is something that I really appreciate because if you lose power, what the status is that the plug comes back as is very important. So this is how you'd be able to change that. So in the state that it's in right now, it would be returning to the last on state. So however it was. If I select off, when it reconnects to power, regardless, it will make sure that that's off, which is really helpful. If you have this plugged into a light and 3 o'clock in the morning, you get power back. But if you have this in a location where you want to have a light on and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you could set it for on, or you just leave it at last on state, meaning what was the state of the plug when you lost power. Auto off timer. If I turn this on, come into one of my plugs, I can select this to be on and then automatically turn off after how long? 2 hours all the way up to 23 hours. So if you have something that every day needs to be turned off at a specific time, this is where you would come in and change that so that would happen. We have our placement guide. It's going to walk you through placement of how this should be. We have group. Well, right now I don't have a group. I just have plug 1 and plug 2, but I can add this to a group by selecting a bunch of other items that Tapo has and create a group like that. Smart actions, we touched on that before, but here we go. You saw that page. This is how you could set up if this then that happens with the Tapo plug, just different location. Device information, a lot of sensitive information in there, not going to show you that. And then finally, firmware, by default, it will be on auto update if you did that during the setup process, during an off time. But if you don't want that, you can turn off auto update and select to manually update it by coming here. We can also select remove device by selecting remove at the bottom. And that has been everything that we can do for the Tapo P400M in the Tapo app. Now that we've seen everything that we can do for this smart plug using the Tapo application, what's next? Well, for me, that's actual power usage. This outdoor plug is capable of handling up to 1800 watts, which can be used for things like outdoor furnaces and swimming pool pumps. So larger outdoor devices. But how much power does the plug actually use on its own? Well, when idling, meaning it's connected to Wi-Fi but not doing anything, it uses between 0.5 watts of power to negligible power based on my testing. If you have one outlet on, it will use between 0.8 watts of power to 0.9 watts of power. And when you have both the outlets on, it uses up to 1.2 watts of power. Keep in mind that is for the smart plug itself, not anything that you have plugged into it. Plugging things into it will increase the power usage. Speaking of power usage, we talked about what happens when the smart plug comes back from a power outage. What we didn't talk about was how quickly can this reestablish its connection with the Wi-Fi network when power is restored. In my testing, I found that the plug can reestablish its connection in about 5 to 6 seconds, which is pretty good, all things considered. If you're planning on using this smart plug with voice assistance, just know it is compatible with Alexa, Apple Siri, and Google Assistant. With all the great things that this can do, that doesn't mean that there aren't a few cons, and I want to bring them up just as a data point for you. I mentioned that the cable itself is rather thick and might prevent your outdoor weatherproofing for your electrical outlet to not close completely, but this is a common thing with outdoor smart plugs, but is a data point that I wanted to bring up. Overall, if you're looking for a very well-rounded, Matter-supported outdoor smart plug that can handle your higher output wattage outdoor devices, then the Tapo P400M might be what you've been looking for. I know I will be swapping out my current outdoor smart plug with it. Because of that, I can strongly recommend it. If this sounds like the outdoor smart plug you've been looking for, I will have a link where you can pick one up for yourself in the description area below. If you appreciate the time and effort that goes into making comprehensive videos like this, make sure to hit that like button to help other people find the video as well. If you like what I'm doing here and want to be notified of my next review, hit that subscribe button. Still not sure if this is the right outdoor smart plug for you? On screen now, you'll see 2 other reviews that I've done to help you make a more informed decision for yourself.